Today I'm having a conversation with Stevie Johns, and Stevie and I go way back, and we kind of lost touch there for a while, but that's the great thing about social media and technology is that you can reconnect with people really quickly. But I never forgot about Stevie because she made quite an impression on me way back, I'd say more than 15 years ago, and I'd only been in business for like 4 or 5 years at that point. And it was working on a video project where we were interviewing the CEO and president of Florida Virtual School, Julie Young. And Stevie was Julie's right-hand person, and she was incredible. Definitely made an impression on me, and we stayed connected through LinkedIn and so on over the years. And the funny thing is, she and I know so many of the same people. A lot of them have been my clients or people I've interviewed on my last podcast. So it's kind of cool when we reconnected and I said, Stevie, I love what you're doing now because I saw her promoting her new business, which is Inkwell Mgmt. She manages placement for speakers, but so much more relationship based than a lot of speaker bureaus, which are kind of commoditized. And I loved how she talked about her business, and she's just in her first year. And even though she's had a lot of experience running her own consultancy prior to Inkwell Mgmt, so she saw what she needed to do. So she hit the ground running when she launched Inkwell. But she talks a lot about those first decisions that she made. And right from the get-go, she was making some very big, very bold decisions that affected how she became anxious about some things. Like she brought on people that she wasn't sure she was going to be able to support. And it was just one of those things where everything kind of fell together, but she stayed so true through an intention to her vision for her business. And she also evolved it. And that's what we talk about in this conversation. So not only does she talk about like what her business is and how she got started, but also some of the things that she's really connected to through her heart and through her intention and what she really wants to have for her own business. And the number one thing for her is relationships. And that's how she's grown her business to where it is now in just a year. It's just mind-boggling how she talks about it. I love our conversation, and I hope you do too. Welcome to My Solopreneur Life. I'm Terry Pappy, your gracious host, and I am so glad you're here. I have a wonderful episode for you. Sit back, relax, and let's have some real talk about what it is to be a solopreneur. Hey, Stevie. I am so happy that you are here today on My Solopreneur Life, and we're going to talk about starting when it comes to being a solopreneur. But before we get into that, please tell my listener about the work you're doing today in your one-person business.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me, Terry. I am Stevie Johns, and I am the founder of a boutique speaker manager agency called Inkwell Mgmt. Started this organization out of a passion for getting more people on stages to share their unique stories. And I have been in business a year, one short year. We're lean and mean, but we've made some definite impact and excited to share more today.
And how many, in that 1 year, by the way, how many speakers are you actually repping now?
So I did a soft launch with 3 speakers, and now I am at 18.
1 year. Okay, so for my listener, if you heard that, this is what's possible. And if you go to, and I'll have a link to Stevie's website, it's inkwell-mgmt.com. But if you go to her site, these speakers that she is repping are incredible powerhouse people. And I don't know if you know or not, but I used to be, and still am to some degree, very involved in the National Speakers Association. I would do a lot of marketing and branding and stuff for speakers and just helping them get gigs, etc. And believe me, there are some very, very, no offense, none of them were my clients, very mediocre speakers out there. And the fact, Stevie, that you were able to rep some of the most talented, just incredible from the stage individuals, and they've got really nice platforms. It says a lot about you and your commitment, but see, I know you and I know you're up to great things. By the way, I did tell Stevie when we talked prior to this episode that I absolutely love the name of her business, Inkwell Mgmt. I just think it's fantastic. So, Stevie, what I'd love for you to talk about, especially since this is so like now for you, being in your first year, and if you could give my listener an idea of what were some of the things, not that we need your whole resume because they can see where you've worked and what you've done on your LinkedIn profile, but what really led up to you finally deciding it's time for me, because you're a wife and a mother and you're running your own business, you have a lot going on. So talk about what were some of the things that were leading up to that helped you decide this is really where my heart is and what I want to do?
Yeah, when I first went off on my own after exiting my lengthy career in corporate America, I was really in a space previously, like my background's in psychology, so I really always leaned into personal and professional development. And when I started my own consultancy, I did just that. I partnered with individuals and organizations to help them become better. So, whatever that looked like from either a process standpoint, a talent standpoint, even like from a networking or culture building standpoint, I was partnering with individuals and organizations on those levels. It was so fulfilling in that when I decided to go in and make my space in the speaking world, it was more around like, what can I do to be a little disruptive? And so, you know, after many, many months of discussing what that looked like and how it could work, it was truly around creating a space where, regardless of if the speaker or podcaster or author or coach was a household name, it didn't really matter, right? Did they have the values that I align with? What is their story? What is their presence? How do they share that story? How do I think that they could get to that level of making that true impact on the stage? And so that was really what I leaned into. I knew I could do it. There was a lot of things in the way. Starting from the ground up is always scary, but I had faith. I had a lot of support, and I created a business plan alongside my sister, who is also my identical twin. So who else could I have more, support and energy from? And we just align on all the things. But that was really where it started. And my goal with Inkwell from day one was to create a space for speakers, authors, podcasters, influencers to be able to authentically share their story. And so my roster is built on authenticity, community, integrity. I've really made sure that all of these individuals do have a well-rooted story and are in all different sectors of niches, if you will. So anyone from any organization could really lean into what we have to offer to create that unique experience, regardless of budget or the specific topic that they're looking for.
Notice how you went into like almost like your sales spiel. And I love that because you're so married. No, seriously, it's so natural for you. And this is why I'm pointing this out for my listener. It's so natural for you because of how you chose your business model and what it should align with. And the first thing you said was align with my values. And what's really interesting that I find with solopreneurship is we have the ability to do that at a deep level when we choose who we work with. Because, and I find myself on this seesaw a little bit from a balance perspective. It's like, because sometimes I care more about my client's business than they do. And I get so personally invested because I want them to be successful. And I think about things that are probably way out of the scope of what they hired me for. But I get to that point where I see like a truck coming and I'm like, listen, you want to get out of the way, right? But what's interesting is like we're running a business, right? So we have to do stuff that's going to earn income and keep our business going and earn referrals and so on. But then we have this other side where we're the boss. We make the final decisions. We're the ones who choose the direction we want to go. And when we're clear on that, see, that's another distinction. It's like a lot of people aren't really clear about it. They're more about, I have to survive. I've got to get business. I'm going to just do everything I did in corporate, right? And then they just go chase that. And they wonder why they're not fulfilled, or they have a roller coaster of a pipeline. And so what I love, absolutely love about what you shared is how you have that clarity in what you align with and how you want to run your business. And like I said, it wasn't meant to be criticism. It's like you just naturally went into the value prop, which falls right in place because you're so clear about who you are and who you want to work with. So in that first year, you also said it's scary starting your own thing. So I want to talk about the scary because I'm coming up almost on 20 years and I still have moments where I get a little anxious. I think part of it will always happen when you're a solopreneur because you don't have the support structure around you in the business as a solopreneur to help you with that. And you, with your background in psychology, I'm dying to hear you talk about that. So talk about that, what your experience was.
When I first had this concept and I was really eager to get started because I knew that there was an opportunity and a door was opening, I was very naturally structured and I am creating all of the processes. I'm going to do all of the things to scale. And my sister and my husband were like, well, you don't really know what that looks like yet. So how can you create all of that before you even know what it looks like? And I said, well, that's just it. I'm picturing what it looks like. I'm creating the processes around what I think it will be like, and then we can shift, right? And so that's really what I did. I leaned in to
Hold on right there. I'm sorry, Stevie. I got to jump on that. That is flippin' brilliant. And I'll tell you why I'm getting like goosebumps thinking about it. You had a focus. Your sister and your husband were more pragmatic because they didn't quite, two things, but they didn't quite understand how you could be so forward thinking and like they wanted to protect you. I'm making assumptions here, obviously. They wanted to protect you, so they were like, well, how can you do that? And you're like, I was so focused. I knew I'm visualizing. I can see it happening. This is my plan. This is where I want to go. This is what I want to do. This is why in your first year, you have 18 speakers, by the way. But the fact that you were so dialed into that, and this is why I really want my listener to catch this. It's like your internal focus, your heart, your soul, what you're really propelling energetically, vibrationally, as far as your vision and what you're creating is so important, especially in the starting phase. So I apologize for interrupting, but I just wanted to point that out, how powerful that was of what you did and how you came back and said, this is what I'm focused on. I've got a hold of it like a dog with a bone. And I'm like, I am not letting go. So talk more about that, and I'll try not to rudely interrupt you.
No, you're good. I love it. Well, you must know that now a lot of that has changed, right? So we did build to scale. We created processes and systems, and what I thought would work, or what I thought, this is important too, what I thought every speaker would want as a manager or as that support arm is not true for every speaker, right? So I had to shift how I was going to lean into each of the different personalities with what their needs were. And I'm used to that. You know, I can shift and flex, and in fact, it keeps it interesting and doesn't make, the support or admin feel so the same, right? Your everyday admin work. But even down to the people. So I invested day one in a social media and marketing manager, a strategy officer, obviously, more part-time. That's my sister. And she definitely sees things that I don't because I'm just so in the weeds day to day.
Very important. Yeah.
And I also hired an assistant, which, Terry, you know this. It was very difficult for me because I was chief of staff in my prior corporate life, and I know what good support what good support
and
looks
you're
like.
Very, very picky.
Yeah. So it's hard to give that up, but I was very intentional about who I surrounded myself with because I knew I needed them. I didn't have the money to pay them right then. I was paying them out of, my personal stash. But I think that's how I got where I am now, because I look back to June 4th, 2024, which was soft opening day one, my 39th birthday. And my goal was on my 40th birthday, I want to feel all the love and the energy that I had put in and the very intentional love and sacredness around this company that I was building. And happy to say that on my 40th birthday, I was on a plane to Nashville for a week and celebrated with some of my speakers who joined me. And, I've really, it's so humbling, to truly do this work and do it in such a way that is different than maybe what some of them are used to, because I do have some seasoned speakers, but some of them I might have spoiled because they're new to the circuit and they're just getting their feet wet, but we're truly giving them an experience too, and embracing and loving them just like we do our clients. So, and that's really important.
Of course. And that's great. And there's a couple things I want to kind of glom onto there, is because not all solopreneurs can do that day one, can make that investment in subcontractors to help. Now, your sister's in a very special category because she is your twin. But still, I mean, the assistant and the social media, those are very important components. And if you're initially wanting, because of your experience and, I knowing you're very, very prepared person, and you want to go and do it right, you want to have everything in place that you're going to need to create that scale, even though now you've kind of realized that scale's not the answer to the heart-centered approach you wanted to take. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It just diverts your attention away from what's really going to be most fulfilling for you as a business owner, as a solopreneur. And what I also loved about what you were sharing is that you took that step. And when I was asking about like what was scary about it, I haven't really heard you say where the scary part came in, because you really dove in with both feet. You knew your mission and where you were going initially, even though you've evolved that, right? But you hired those subcontractors. You made the investment out of your own personal funds. Not a lot of solopreneurs are able to do that. I know I wasn't. And I didn't even know what I was doing when I started. I was giving away work. I was so desperate to get clients. But the way you started was very, very different on many levels. So talk a little bit more about the emotional impact of knowing who you were, what you wanted to do, how you wanted to get it accomplished, and how you were managing your own emotional set points and finding those things, because they're not always easy to find.
Yeah, they're definitely hidden. And I think one of the scariest pieces around starting Inkwell foundationally was it's a very small industry. It's very set in its ways. And there are so many risks that we take regardless of what industry or sector we're working in. But for me, I knew everyone in the industry, all the key players. And I reminded myself that this is a relationship business. I have those relationships. I'm going to lean into those. Yeah, it's scary. It's scary to fill your calendar with sharing the news that you're starting something that to some degree already exists. I think that having those conversations with those individuals, again, going back to the relationship part of it, was helpful. Some of them, critiqued me. Some of them were like, you're going to do great. Everyone loves you, which is nice to hear. But sometimes you're like, okay, I want the hard stuff. And I was really open to hearing that. Because being in this personal and professional development space, you always need to be open and accepting of what your potential friends in the work that you do are saying or leading you down whatever path. That was the scariest thing. And also, I am not a salesperson. And so I truly loved what you mentioned early on. But my husband said to me, he said, babe, you don't have to be a salesperson. Going back to the relationship aspect, like you have conversations with people, you meet them, you show, what the value is in working with you. That's not selling them. That's being honest with what you can provide. Those were two of the biggest scariest points, but hypothetical, right? Because I didn't know what that would feel like. I think physically, the scary thing was trying to share with speakers why it was important to join me as their manager and not someone else. Because
Interesting. Yeah.
and I did have the pleasure of working with a very well-known speaker, so I think I had that in my toolbox, but that doesn't guarantee anything, right? And so again, just thinking about all of the things that I could have capitalized on and stepped away from, or said, this is just too much for me. I leaned into what I was really good at, which was knowing that I had relationships, knowing that I could do it. It might take a while to make money enough to, get to where I was, but I knew that with my mission and passion behind what I was truly trying to do, which was ultimately create impact, which seems so cliche, but I knew that Inkwell could provide a very different, unique experience and how we would get to that impact. And it wasn't just booking a keynote and having them show up and speak and leave, right? And so I knew that I could get there. But it still was scary. And there was a lot of mornings I did not want to open my computer, or I'm like, what invoices are going out today? What money is coming in? But that was a small part, right? I mean, we all worry about finances, but I think that to get to where I knew I needed to be, I had to really lean into what I knew would work.
Yeah. And I detect this theme through our conversation about how you're trusting your gut, trusting your focus and your intention. And that is critical. Another thing that I love, and I must have you back for when I do a season about relationships, because you hit the nail on the head. Relationships are so critical when you're a solopreneur, because many of us are coming out of corporate or out of several organizations where we've worked in the past, or communities where we've built these relationships. Those people are the ones that are going to get us started.
Yep.
Honestly, that's literally was the critical point for me when I very first started. It was someone that I worked with at Marriott that reached out to me, and he's like, I'm going to start my own consultancy. What I want to finish with in our conversation here as we wrap up is, when you were doing all of this, you had the intention, you had the focus, Stevie, you knew what experience you wanted to have. It was a very personal thing for you. The fact that you thrive on your relationships with people, whether they're clients, whether they're colleagues, whether they're just people in your universe, just like me, how you and I first worked together when you were at Florida Virtual School well over 10 years ago. And what I love about that is truly, to me, is the engine behind any solopreneur success. But the fact that you started having expenses early in your business, you were making choices about moving quickly, which in a year in, you're already this successful, but that adds to the pressure around, I don't want to open my computer today because what invoices are there, right? So there was a lot of things that you put in place that you still had to navigate. So if we have a solopreneur who is considering starting their own business, whether they're just laid off and they're like, I'm done with corporate, I'm just going to do my own thing, or whether they're in a job they hate and they're like ready to go, or they got laid off, or whatever the situation, they're ready to go. Or they're like you, they're in their first year, but they're not quite there yet. They haven't generated the resources to hire somebody to help them, or they haven't quite figured out their brand or their market, or whatever the case may be. They're just not seeing the success that they would like to see a year in. What are one or two things that you could provide them as far as guidance point, like been there, done that, this is what I recommend, that you could share with them to help them navigate this either decision to go into business or make it through that first year or 2 years where they're really struggling?
There's two definite key takeaways that I would tell you, the listener, to do. The first thing is start today. It's always really easy to get to it, right? And what I started doing was journaling. And I've had my own consultancy for 11 years prior to Inkwell. And I was noticing a trend in my reflections. And, it's crazy how fast 3 years can fly by, right? And you feel a certain way, but you don't address it. So start today, even if it's the smallest of steps, buying a domain, writing down a business plan or your thoughts on what it is that you want to do, how you will accomplish it, who you need in your sphere to do that. Really lean into that, because that's really what's going to propel you tomorrow and what's going to make you like go to that next step. And it's not all going to happen overnight. And so that's the scary part. But if you start today and you have just a tiny little inkling, or you've peeked beyond the curtain to see what it could look like, that is really what's going to help you with what steps you take tomorrow. And the second thing that I would say, and this isn't like a sales pitch, and I'm not telling you to like change your whole life or routine, being in this space, and really anywhere, I've worked in a lot of different organizations for many leaders. The one thing that I gave up on in corporate America was myself, my time, my health. And you can't lose that, because when you do, your vision slip, you still might be able to be successful, but like, are you truly fulfilled? Like deep down, are you really loving what it is that you're doing and how you feel about yourself, the conversations that you're having, the people you're surrounding yourself with, how you're parenting? All of those pieces, I feel like, contribute every day to how I can get up and be successful. And the one thing that I know for a fact to be true is, and I'm naturally anxious and naturally OCD.
Join the club.
The one thing that I really lean into is making sure that I prioritize time for myself and meditate. And you don't have to be a pro, you don't have to be led, you can literally just breathe in silence. And that space gives you so much energy to be able to give to others, because that's really what you're doing, regardless of what, industry you're in and what you're looking to accomplish. So those are my two takeaways.
I love it. And, it makes a lot of sense what you just gave our listener, because everything you've said leading up to it, kind of like, okay, well, that's how she does it, right? Because everybody wants the how. Everybody's always solutioning. Everybody's always on YouTube going, how do I do X, Y, and Z in my business? And it's all very tactical. It's very like, go here, use this platform, take this for your sales approach or whatever. And it becomes a very tactical outlook as far as what we do. Many solopreneurs, myself included, are providing a tactical service in many ways. You're providing these access points for speakers to apply for opportunities to be on stage at certain associations, events, and so on like that, and doing so much more for them as well from an administrative standpoint. So it's easy to get so caught up on that. But what I love about what you shared today, Stevie, and I thank you for that, is how much is behind that drives that. I referred to it earlier as engine. It's your fuel that keeps you moving every day and doing what you need to do to be in action, right? Start. That was one of your first tip, right? Just start today. Always be in action, moving your business forward. Like, you got to remember, every day do something that moves your business forward, even if it's something that's just in your head. And taking care of yourself is always very important, because it's easy to get overwhelmed when you have to wear a lot of hats as a solopreneur. And it's one of those things where we have to remember how important that is. So thank you so much, Stevie, for being here and sharing your wonderful approach and everything you've done to create a very successful business in a very short period of time. And I will have more information about Stevie on the show notes page. And I thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I know you're disappointed, but that's it for this episode. Listen, the great news is there's another one coming, so stay tuned. Anyway, I just want to make sure that you do the prompt. If this episode had a prompt, and you get that homework done, because you're going to be a better solopreneur. How's that for a maternal finger shaking at you? Hey, listen, thanks so much for being here, for giving me time of your day, and, for taking it on. So if you want to learn more and stay connected with me, just head on over to mysolopreneurlife.com. Thanks a bunch. See you soon. That was pretty good. I think I'll keep that one.